People always ask me why I became a photographer. I never give them the real answer. The real answer is too simple and too personal. I like to watch. I like to see the things that other people miss. A shadow falling on a wall at 4 in the afternoon, the way light moves across someone's hand when they don't know anyone is looking. The small, honest moments that happen between the big ones, the ones nobody puts in a frame. My name is Jelly. I am 27 years old, and I live alone in a small apartment on the 3rd floor of an old building. There is no elevator. The paint on the walls is yellow and cracked. My kitchen table is covered with film rolls and empty coffee cups. My bedroom smells like photochemicals. Every wall in the apartment is covered with pictures I've taken, black and white, color, big prints, and small ones. Some people dream of money. Some people dream of a big house with a garden. I just want to capture beautiful things before the world moves on and forgets them. For 3 years, I worked as a freelance photographer for an architecture firm downtown. My job was to take photos of completed projects, new buildings, renovated offices, and finished designs. The firm belonged to a man named Chuke. He was 30 years old, tall, with dark hair that always fell slightly across his forehead. He had serious brown eyes and a quiet voice. To the people in his office, he was the brilliant architect, the boss, the man with the blueprints and the big ideas. To me, he was something else entirely. Through my camera lens, I saw things about Chuke that nobody else noticed. I saw the way he pressed his lips together when he was deep in thought, how his eyebrows came closer like they were having a private conversation. I saw how he stood on his office balcony when it rained, not running inside like everyone else, but just standing there, watching the water fall, his coffee getting cold in his hand. Once, on a Tuesday morning, I saw him help an old woman carry her grocery bags near the building entrance. He put down his briefcase. He didn't look around to see if anyone noticed. He just picked up her bags and walked with her to her car. Then he smiled at her, a soft, real smile, the kind you can't practice in a mirror, and went back inside. I took a photo of that smile. He never knew. I had a whole collection of these secret photos. Dozens of them. Chuke reading on a bench. Chuke laughing at something on his phone. Chuke looking at the sky while waiting for a taxi. I kept them in a folder on my computer labeled personal, not because I was strange or obsessive, but because those small, quiet moments were the most beautiful things my camera had ever found. I loved Chuke. I loved him quietly, completely, and without any hope of return. In 3 years, I never said more than 5 sentences to him outside of work. Good morning, the photos are ready. I'll send them by Friday. The light was nice today. That was the whole conversation. I was the woman behind the camera. Invisible, always in the room, but never in the picture. And I told myself over and over that this was enough. It was never enough. But I said it anyway, because saying it was easier than feeling the truth. One Tuesday afternoon in March, Chuke called me into his office. This was unusual. Normally, his assistant sent me emails with project details. I walked in and sat across from his wide desk. The window behind him showed the city in gray afternoon light. He looked different that day. He was smiling, but it was a smile I had never seen before, happy, but also far away, like he was already somewhere else in his mind, somewhere I could not follow. "Julie," he said, "I have some news." I waited. My hands were folded on my lap. "I'm getting married." The words came in through my ears, but for a moment they had no shape, no meaning. Like hearing someone speak a language you almost understand, but not quite. Then, slowly, the meaning arrived, and it was heavy. "Her name is Eve," he continued, still smiling. "We've been together for about 8 months. She's amazing." 8 months. I counted backward silently. 8 months ago was November. I was photographing his newest building on a cold November morning, my fingers red from the wind. He was probably already in love with her then. He was probably texting her while I adjusted my lens in the parking lot, and I had no idea she even existed. "Congratulations," I said. My voice came out steady, normal. I was surprised by that. Inside my chest, something went very cold and very still. Like someone opened a window in the middle of winter and all the warmth left without warning. "Thank you," Chuke said. He leaned forward in his chair. "I actually wanted to ask you something important. I want you to be our official wedding photographer." I stared at him. "You have an incredible eye, Julie. I've always thought so. Your photos, they capture things other photographers miss. I trust you more than anyone for this." He trusted me. He trusted my eye. He wanted me to stand behind my camera and photograph the happiest day of his life with someone else. He was asking me to make his love for another woman look beautiful. "Of course," I said. "I would be happy to." I walked out of his office, down the hall, and into the bathroom. I locked the door. I stood in front of the mirror and looked at my own face. My eyes were dry, my hands were steady, but inside I felt frozen, like a lake in December still on the surface, but cold all the way to the bottom. 2 weeks later, I met Eve. The engagement photo session was at a bright studio downtown. Eve arrived 20 minutes late. She walked in wearing a cream-colored dress and high heels that clicked sharply on the floor. She was tall, thin, and very beautiful. Her hair was perfect, not a single strand out of place. Her makeup looked like it took 2 hours. She smiled at me politely, the way you smile at a waiter who brings your water, then immediately turned to the mirror to check her lipstick. During the session, I asked them to stand close together. Chuke put his arm around her waist. He looked down at her face with warmth and softness, his eyes gentle. But through my lens, I saw something else. Eve was not looking at Chuke. She was looking at the camera. She tilted her head slightly left, then right, searching for her best angle. She turned her hand 3 times, slowly, carefully, to make sure the diamond ring caught the studio light perfectly. Not once did she look into Chuke's eyes with any real feeling. Not once did she lean into his touch the way people do when they feel safe with someone. She stood next to him like a model standing next to a product. Later that night, alone in my apartment, I looked through all the photos on my computer screen. In every single one, Eve was stunning, magazine perfect, but her eyes were flat. There was nothing behind them, no love, no warmth, just a woman who knew exactly how to look perfect for a picture. I told myself it was jealousy. I told myself I was seeing things because I wanted to see them. I closed my laptop, drank cold tea, and went to bed with the lights on. The weeks before the wedding were busy. There were cocktail parties at expensive restaurants, dress fittings at designer boutiques, cake tastings, and visits to the wedding venue. Chuke wanted me to photograph everything, every moment, every detail, so I followed them everywhere, carrying my camera and my tripod, staying in the background. Quiet, invisible, watching, as always. I tried not to pay too much attention to anything beyond my job. I was there to take photos. That was it. But a photographer's eye does not turn off. It sees what it sees. At a cocktail party in a fancy hotel ballroom, I noticed Eve step away from the crowd. She moved toward a window at the far end of the room. She took out her phone and typed something quickly. Her face changed. The confident smile disappeared. Her jaw was tight. She looked worried, almost scared. Then she put the phone away, touched her hair, and walked back to Chuke like nothing had happened, laughing at someone's joke as if the last 2 minutes didn't exist. I saw this happen again at a dress fitting, and again at a dinner party. Every time Chuke looked the other way, Eve checked her phone, and every time her expression turned dark and anxious before she covered it up again. Then I noticed someone else. At a late-night party for the wedding guests, a loud, bright event at a rooftop bar, I was packing my camera near the back entrance when I saw a man standing alone in the parking lot below. He was tall, with light brown hair and an expensive-looking dark coat. He smoked a cigarette slowly and watched the entrance of the building. His eyes moved with purpose. He was looking for someone specific. He was not on the guest list. I knew this because I had spent the whole evening photographing every guest, and I had never seen this face. I learned his name a few days later, overhearing a conversation between two people at the next event. Julian. 2 days after the rooftop party, I saw Julian again, this time at the dress-fitting boutique. He stood in the hallway outside, pretending to look at his phone. He wasn't shopping, he was waiting. When Eve walked out of the boutique door, their eyes met for less than a second. A quick, nervous look, then she turned away sharply, and he disappeared around the corner without a word. Something was wrong. I could feel it the way you feel. Rain coming before the first drop falls, a heaviness in the air, a pressure that doesn't have a name yet. After that, I started paying closer attention. Julian appeared everywhere Eve went. Parking lots, hotel lobbies, side hallways. He never spoke to her in front of other people. He never stood close, but he was always there, somewhere in the background, like a shadow that only my camera could find. And Chuke? Chuke noticed nothing. He was too busy with work and wedding plans and being in love. He trusted Eve completely. Why wouldn't he? She was charming and beautiful and said all the right things at all the right times. But I did not have normal eyes. I had a photographer's eyes, and those eyes do not lie. They cannot. The wedding was planned for a Saturday in early June. The location was an old country estate, about 2 hours from the city, a grand stone building surrounded by gardens, tall oak trees, and fields of wildflowers. It looked like something from a painting. Green grass, stone paths, white roses everywhere. I arrived on Friday afternoon to set up my equipment. My room was small and plain, on the second floor of the guest wing. I put my camera bags on the bed and spent an hour checking every lens, every battery, every memory card. I tested the light in the garden. I chose my positions for the ceremony. Everything had to be perfect. Even if this wedding was going to quietly destroy me inside, I was going to do my job well. That was the one thing I could control. Around sunset, I picked up my camera and went outside. The sky was turning deep orange and soft pink. The air smelled like roses and fresh-cut grass. I walked through the gardens, taking photos of the flowers, the old stone walls, the way the golden light came through the branches of the oak trees. Then I heard something. Voices, low and sharp, coming from behind a thick wall of tall bushes near the far end of the garden. I stopped walking. I held my breath. "You need to be patient, Julian." Eve's voice, tight, controlled. I recognized it immediately. Patient? A man's voice, angry, frustrated. "You keep saying that word. How much longer, Eve? After the wedding, everything changes. I'm marrying him for the inheritance. You know that. That was always the plan. Just give me a little more time." A pause. Then a sound that was soft but unmistakable. A kiss. My body went completely cold. My fingers started shaking. My heart was beating so hard I could hear it in my ears, louder than the birds, louder than the wind in the trees. Very slowly, I raised my camera. I pushed one branch aside with my finger, just enough. Through my long lens, I saw them. Eve and Julian, standing close together. Her hand was on his chest. His arms were around her waist. Her eyes were closed. Click. One photo. One single image. That was all I needed. I stepped back. Slowly, carefully, I walked back to the house on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. I climbed the stairs. I closed my door. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the photo on my camera's small screen. It was clear. It was sharp. It was the truth. Now, I had to choose what to do with it. If I showed this photo to Chuke, I would destroy everything. His wedding, his happiness, his trust in the person he loved. Even if that happiness was built on lies, it would still hurt. It would hurt terribly. But if I stayed silent, he would marry a woman who saw him as nothing more than an inheritance. He would live inside a beautiful lie and never know the door was locked from the outside. I sat there for hours. The room grew dark. I did not turn on the light. I just sat and thought, feeling the weight of that one photograph pressing down on me like a stone on my chest. Morning came. I had not slept at all. I looked out my window and saw the garden being prepared for the ceremony below. White chairs set in perfect rows, flowers arranged on every table, a long white cloth path leading to the altar. Then I saw Chuke. He walked across the green grass in his groom's suit. Dark blue, perfectly fitted. His hair was neatly combed. He was smiling, not the distant office smile. This was something deeper. This was pure hope. He looked like a man who believed the world was good and love was real, and today was going to be the best day of his life. Seeing that smile almost broke me. I turned away from the window. I looked at my camera on the bed. The photo was still there, waiting for me to decide. I could not face Chuke directly. I could not walk up to him, look him in the eyes, and say the words. I was not that brave. I had never been that brave. I was the woman who watched from behind the lens, always behind something. But I could do this one thing. I connected my camera to the small portable printer I had brought for the wedding. The printer hummed. The photo came out, still warm. I looked at it once more, Eve and Julian, together in the garden, the truth in full color. I placed it inside a plain white envelope. Then I took a pen and wrote a note on a small piece of paper. You deserve the truth. From someone who has always watched you from a side. I folded the note, put it with the photo, and sealed the envelope. I walked down the hall to Chuke's room. The door was open. No one was inside. His jacket hung on a chair. A vanity mirror stood on a table near the window, next to his watch and a small glass of water. I placed the envelope on the table, right where he would see it. Then I left, quietly, like a ghost. The next hour was the longest of my life. I stood in the garden with my camera, pretending to photograph the decorations, the arriving guests, the flowers. My hands were not steady. I kept adjusting my lens to hide the shaking. Guests filled the chairs. Music began, a soft violin piece. Eve appeared at the end of the garden path in a long white dress, her veil catching the morning light. She looked perfect. Everyone stood up, but Chuke did not come to the altar. 1 minute passed. 2. The music played again from the beginning. People looked around nervously. Eve's smile became tight. The wedding planner spoke urgently into her phone. Then a side door opened. Chuke walked out. But he was not the same man I had seen that morning. His face was white, completely drained of color. His eyes were red and swollen. His hands hung at his sides, trembling. He walked down the white path, not toward the altar, toward Eve. He stopped right in front of her. He reached inside his jacket and pulled out the photograph. He held it up for 1 long second, then dropped it on the ground at her feet. This wedding is over, he said. His voice was low and broken, like glass cracking from the inside. Everything happened at once. Guests jumped up from their chairs. Whispers turned into gasps. Someone shouted a question. Someone else started crying. Eve's face went completely pale. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. And in the middle of all that noise and chaos, I quietly picked up my camera bag, my tripod, and my small printer. I walked through the back gate, across the gravel parking lot, and got into my car. I drove away without looking back. My hands were shaking on the wheel. My eyes were blurry. But I kept driving. He could never know it was me. That was the only thing that mattered. The months after the wedding that never happened were quiet. Strangely quiet, like the silence after a storm, when the world is still deciding what comes next. I left the city. I moved to a small town near the coast where nobody knew my name and nobody asked questions. I found a new apartment even smaller than my old one, but with a window that looked out at the sea. I hung my photos on the walls. I bought new film. I started taking small jobs again. Family portraits, photos for local restaurants and shops. Nothing connected to architecture. Nothing connected to him. Through old colleagues, I heard that Chuke was not doing well. He canceled projects. He stopped going to the office for weeks. He tried to find out who had sent the envelope, but there was nothing to trace. I had printed the photo from my personal camera, not the work one. The note was written in plain block letters, not my handwriting. I had been careful, like I had been careful my whole life, always careful, always quiet, always invisible. Some nights, lying in bed, listening to the ocean, I wondered if I did the right thing. I broke his dream. I took away his happiness, even though his happiness was a lie. I gave him pain instead of peace. Was that fair? Was that my decision to make? Then I remembered Eve's voice in the garden, cold, calculating. I'm only marrying him for the inheritance. And I knew. A lie that feels warm is still a lie. Pain that comes from truth heals eventually. Pain that comes from deception never does. Slowly, over many months, the heaviness in my chest became lighter, not gone completely. It would probably never be fully gone, but lighter, easier to carry. 2 years passed. I was in a small bookshop on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, looking through a shelf of magazines. My fingers moved through the pages without really thinking. Travel, fashion, food. Then my hand stopped. An architecture magazine. And there, on a full page, was Chuke. He was standing in front of a new building, modern, clean, with large glass windows and smooth gray stone. He looked different, older, a little thinner in the face. But his eyes were calm, steady. There was peace in them that I had not seen before. And standing beside him was a woman. Not Eve. This woman was shorter, with brown hair that fell naturally past her shoulders. She wore a simple blue dress. She was not looking at the camera. She was looking at Chuke, and she was smiling, not a perfect smile, not a practiced pose, but a real smile. The kind that starts small in the eyes and then fills the whole face, the kind you cannot fake. I stood there in the bookshop, holding the magazine open, and something inside me moved. Like ice beginning to melt in early spring, very slow, very quiet. I was not sad. I was not jealous. I felt something I did not expect to feel. I felt glad. He found someone real, someone who looked at him the way I had always wanted to but never could. And that was enough. That had to be enough. I bought the magazine. I walked home in the rain. I made tea. I sat near my window and watched the water run down the glass just like he used to do, standing alone on his office balcony. Then I picked up my phone and opened my photo gallery. I scrolled past hundreds of pictures, beaches, seashells, streets at night, the faces of strangers, clouds at sunset, until I found it, the photo. The one I took over 3 years ago, Chuke standing on his balcony in the rain. His hair was wet. His eyes were far away, looking at something I could never see. One hand rested on the metal railing. He didn't know I was there. He didn't know I took this picture. He probably didn't even remember my full name. Just Jolie, the photographer. I touched the screen gently with my fingertip, like touching something precious and fragile, something that might disappear if I pressed too hard. He would never know it was me who saved him. He would never know that someone loved him from the other side of a camera lens for 3 long, silent years. And that was okay. Some love is not meant to be spoken. It is not meant to be shared or returned or turned into something with a name. Some love is quiet. It lives inside a photograph, inside a memory, inside the space between the person who watches and the person who is watched. I put down my phone. I picked up my camera. Outside, the rain was slowing, and the light behind the clouds was beginning to change golden, soft, and new, like the beginning of something I couldn't name yet. I opened my window. The air smelled clean and fresh. I pointed my lens at the sky and took a photo, not of what was, but of what was coming.